The Denver Broncos may have found one of the most dangerous secret weapons of the entire preseason. The craziest part? Almost no one expected this undrafted player to become part of such an important conversation so early. But now, coaches are noticing him, special teams discussions are heating up, and there's a growing belief that this signing could directly impact how the Broncos use some of their most explosive players going forward. And believe me, when you hear the numbers behind this story, you'll understand exactly why Broncos Nation is starting to get excited. But before we continue, make sure you've already clicked the like button if you truly believe the Denver Broncos are building something special for this season. True Broncos fans know this team is hungry, motivated, and ready to surprise a lot of people. And if you're optimistic about what's to come, comment below right now. Go Broncos! 2026 will be the year of our comeback. Now let's get straight into this because this situation is actually more interesting than some fans realize. Colby Katzis entered the Broncos as an undrafted free agent from Northern Arizona, coming out of the Big Sky Conference. And at first glance, some people may immediately overlook him because of the current depth at wide receiver. But according to what was discussed, the Broncos are not looking at him primarily as a traditional receiver fighting for offensive snaps. The real value here is what he can bring as a return specialist. That is where things start getting serious. Special teams coordinator Darren RZZY reportedly made it very clear that he likes this kid, and that alone immediately changes the conversation around Katzis. When a coordinator openly shows excitement about an undrafted player this early, especially a player with elite athletic traits, you pay attention. And the numbers explain exactly why. Katzis posted an elite relative athletic score of 9.26, with great explosion grades and agility numbers that instantly stand out. Even though he comes in at 6 feet 1 inch, 185 pounds, which some might consider a lighter frame, the athletic profile is impossible to ignore. But the biggest thing Broncos fans need to focus on is this. He led the entire FCS in kick return average at 34.2 yards per return. Not only that, but he also had a 100-yard kick return touchdown and finished top 5 nationally in kick return average across all of college football, not just the FCS level. On top of that, he earned first-team All-Big Sky honors on special teams. That is not normal production. And this is where the Marvin Mims conversation starts becoming really important. Because the Broncos already know what Marvin Mims can do as a returner. Since entering the league, he has produced excellent special teams numbers, averaging over 26 yards per kick return and nearly 16 yards per punt return with 2 touchdowns. His impact in that area has already been established. But what if the Broncos want even more from Marvin Mims as a receiver? That appears to be the real question floating around this entire discussion. Because if the Broncos truly believe Mims is ready for a larger offensive role, then finding another dangerous return specialist suddenly becomes extremely valuable. Instead of forcing Mims to carry every responsibility in the return game, Denver could potentially allow him to focus more heavily on becoming a bigger receiving threat while Katzis absorbs some of those special teams duties. And honestly, when you look deeper into the numbers surrounding Marvin Mims, there may actually be untapped potential there. The discussion pointed out that Mims was rarely used heavily over the middle of the field last season, despite posting a very strong receiving grade between the hashes. There's a growing belief that Denver may not have fully unlocked that side of his game yet. That's why Colby Katzis suddenly matters more than people think. Because if Katzis proves he can truly handle kick return duties consistently at the NFL level, the Broncos gain flexibility. And flexibility in the NFL is massive. It allows the coaching staff to experiment more with Marvin Mims offensively without completely sacrificing elite return production. And the conversation did not stop there. There was also discussion about whether Denver should potentially keep 7 wide receivers if Katzis proves himself during camp and preseason. The idea would be simple. If he earns the role as a dedicated return specialist, his roster spot suddenly becomes justified regardless of offensive snap count. That is why training camp for this player is going to be fascinating to watch. Because players like this can completely change the bottom half of an NFL roster. One explosive return in preseason can alter an entire evaluation process. Coaches love players who create hidden yardage, flip field position, and provide value without needing 10 offensive touches per game. And based on everything discussed, Katzis may already be positioning himself as exactly that type of player. At the same time, there was also strong praise surrounding Bo Nix and his mentality, with comments describing him as extremely composed emotionally and highly competitive. The discussion emphasized how unfazed he appears under pressure and highlighted strong advanced metrics from last season, particularly on third down situations. And finally, another important piece of news emerged. The Broncos have now officially signed all of their rookie draft picks after final contract details involving injury clauses were resolved. That means everybody is now officially under contract heading into the next phase of preparation. What makes this entire situation even more fascinating is that the Broncos may not simply be looking for another returner. They may actually be looking for someone who can preserve one of the most explosive weapons already on the roster. And the deeper you think about it, the more sense this starts to make. Because Marvin Mims already proved he can impact games in multiple ways. The issue was never talent. The issue was usage. Throughout the discussion, there was a strong belief that Mims has not yet been fully unleashed inside the offense, especially in areas of the field where his quickness and separation ability could become a nightmare for defenses. And if Denver truly wants to elevate his offensive role, they have to make smart decisions about how much wear and tear he absorbs on special teams. That's where Colby Katzis enters the picture again. A lot of undrafted players arrive at rookie camp simply trying to survive reps and make a practice squad. But this situation feels a little different because Katzis already has one elite trait that translates immediately: field flipping returnability. Coaches notice that instantly. Special teams coordinators especially notice it. Think about what a dangerous return specialist can actually do for a football team. One explosive return can completely shift momentum, shorten the field for the offense, energize the sideline, and force opponents to change how they kick the football. That hidden yardage matters over the course of a season. And based on the numbers discussed, Katzis was doing exactly that consistently at Northern Arizona. A 34.2-yard kick return average is not just good. That's the type of production that immediately grabs NFL attention. Add in the 100-yard touchdown return and the national ranking across all of college football, and suddenly you understand why the Broncos may view him as more than just another camp body. What's also interesting is how this could affect roster construction. Normally, when fans talk about the final wide receiver spots, they focus entirely on offensive production. But special teams changes everything. A player who can dominate in the return game creates value even without a huge offensive role. That's why the conversation about potentially carrying 7 wide receivers became so important. If Katzis proves he can handle those duties reliably, Denver suddenly gains roster flexibility and offensive flexibility at the same time. And honestly, that may be the hidden theme behind this entire discussion: maximizing other players by allowing specialists to specialize. Because the more responsibility Katzis can absorb in the return game, the more freedom Marvin Mims potentially gains inside the offense. And speaking of offensive development, the praise surrounding Bo Nix was another major takeaway that Broncos fans should pay attention to. Garrett Bowles described him as extremely even-keeled emotionally, somebody who doesn't get too high or too low regardless of what's happening around him. That type of mentality matters more than people realize. The discussion highlighted how Bo Nix can show emotion in the moment, whether that means frustration, competitiveness, or intensity, but then quickly reset mentally afterward. That ability to regain composure is something many young quarterbacks struggle with early in their careers. And when the advanced numbers were brought up, things became even more interesting. The conversation referenced his completed air yards, intended air yards, drop passes, bad throw numbers, and especially his EPA metrics on third down situations. According to the discussion, Bo ranked 7th highest in EPA on third downs, which was described as one of the most important indicators for